Yes, so hi everyone, and thank you very much to Michael Snell and the Special Interests Group for inviting me here. Do you hear my voice well? And I will talk about something which is my main interest as a researcher, and that's technology and innovation and the topic of cultural diversity, together, mixed. I work at a place called Luleå University of Technology, and that's the geographical position. It's slightly south of the Arctic Circle in Sweden. And here you see, myself, and also closer to the camera is Mr. Fritz-Åke Kuljok, who is a reindeer herder and who has worked as a technician and manager also for us very much throughout the process where we have implemented DTN tests in real-life situations. And I should say also that Luleå University of Technology was inaugurated in 1973, so it's fairly new. And the north in Sweden is pretty much like the north in North America, so it's more sparsely populated and what the sociologists and the anthropologists tend to call remote. And also the name Luleå University, it comes from the place called Luleå by the Gulf of Bothnia, where it's situated. It's a town, and the name of the town, Luleå, comes from the river Luleå that has its outlets. It runs from mountains in northwest to the Gulf of Bothnia in southeast. And that has some kind of importance here. And to kind of create some links to something people might know who are here, I just thought I could mention two of our honorary doctors at LTU, Luleå University of Technology, and this is of course Vint Cerf, who became an honorary doctor with us in 1998, as I saw in the register. I hope they are correct. And this picture is from 2005 when he visited with us in the DTN project. And also some of you might see that this other person, this is Stina Honkama, who until recently was the country director for Sweden, for Google in Sweden. So it's supposed to be a pedagogical tool to create links, and I hope you will remember our university through these links. When I first heard about DTN, I worked with some women in a reindeer herder husbandry community up along the Luleå River. They run an affirmative action project for the women in the community, and the goal was to better the possibilities for women to work as reindeer herders and run businesses within the traditional community. And reindeer husbandry is pretty much like information technology, like it's fairly male-dominated, and the picture is very much the same. And it's very important for the possibilities to remain in the traditional community to have a strong link to the husbandry industry. So therefore it is vital for the cultural well, for the diversity aspect, so that the traditional culture can remain, that the women can also have a chance to remain in the tradition of reindeer husbandry. So it's not just about getting a job, it's about remaining who you are and who you have been brought up to be. And reindeer husbandry in this community, like you have reindeer husbandry all over Siberia and so forth, and in northern Scandinavia. So it's run a bit different in different places. But in this community, the reindeer are herded between the coast, where they can be in the winter, and the high mountains, where they are in the summer, because it's well, it's naturally the best circumstances or conditions for the reindeer. And so the community is what one would say semi-nomadic, with an anthropological term, or at least has been, because modern life makes that, for instance, children, of course, have to go to school, so things change step by step. And this is something that I will talk about more throughout this presentation. And this picture is taken high up in the mountains, above the tree line, so that's why it appears all white and smooth. It's like a snow-covered lake, but it's actually up in the mountains. So, well, when I worked with these reindeer herders, one of the most frequent themes that came up in the talks about how to better the conditions and how to make husbandry more of a realistic proposition for a life career for women and men, of course, was the snowmobile. And I think to explain why DTN then is a matter of cultural diversity, I start with talking about the snowmobile, which represent the current technological paradigm, and to explain why it is not enough and something else is needed. Let's see. Yes. Well, the snowmobile problem then. First of all, we worked in a transdisciplinary mood, so we were interested in both the social aspects like attitudes, and the saying went that women cannot be reindeer herders because the snowmobile is too heavy for them. And so, that was a common explanation in the community and also among people who work in the authorities with oversight over the reindeer husbandry. And then, in fact, the snowmobile is very heavy, and it's too heavy for everyone, to be honest, because it's there are lots of damages, and throughout life one gets quite hurt by it in the long run. So we discussed all these things together, and tried. The women in the community group, they tried to come up with different solutions. How do we go about this snowmobile problem? So education in driving and maintenance, or physical training to become stronger, or low-tech solutions, go back to skiing, and so on and so forth. And in these pictures you see some of the different things one might do. Transportation of snowmobiles, and filling up gas when reaching the overnight destination, and of course just driving around. And also, I thought that the audience would probably be interested to see the snowmobile in use. So this is what we are talking about. Herding animals is about moving them from one place to another, or keeping them in the place where they are supposed to be, where the conditions are most favorable. So this is one of possible scenes. And then, even though we talked about the snowmobile as a problem, obviously without the snowmobile, reindeer husbandry would not be realistic at all since 1970s, 80s definitely. And this picture is from about 1940. It's from a family photo album. And it shows a period of change. You see the reindeer pull the sleigh. Is that the correct English? Yeah. But the sleigh goes on the road. So the roads are entering the area kind of earlier. They would go on snow, obviously, and have this round shape. Of course, yeah, this wouldn't be feasible at all. Transporting equipment, people, and this and that. With the reindeer today, the pace is faster for everything, and there are more things happening in the husbandry areas too. So, the snowmobile is necessary. People have to invest in the snowmobile. They have to keep it in shape. The maintenance has to be done. They have to buy the fuel, pay for the fuel, and so on and so forth. And it allows people to live in the pace of the present time, and it allows people to place a family in one larger village or town, and the reindeer herder would go back and forth from the locations of the animals. But that's what the snowmobile can do. It enables people to do things faster. It doesn't really solve any of the conflicts between living on the one hand a modern life with school, and maybe for the spouse a gainful employment, and then the reindeer herder who needs to be at the position where the reindeer are in the forest or in the mountains and so forth. And this split also affects the traditional learning and passing on the traditional knowledge about husbandry, because, of course, if the children are located where they stay where they can go to school, which necessarily everybody they want to do, and many of the reindeer herders have families with high education and so forth to be a part of the normal society. But in any case, it means that there is a split. So the culture is not really necessarily brought further to the next generations. So there are costs for the snowmobile, and it enables some things to be done quicker, but things basically remain the same. And then come to DTN. Avri Doria, who is an American internet architect, was a guest researcher at LTU in the early 2000s. And she and Anders Lindgren, who was then a PhD student, presented to us this idea about using DTN for creating connectivity and networks. Okay, with this new delay-tolerant networking regime. So, and this opened a totally different horizon from where we used to work with, the problem of how to solve the snowmobile solution, where the technology was the center of attention and what needed to be solved. The idea of having access to the communication that the internet and other networks provide, and all the information and all the people one can reach, and everything, distance education, business contacts, everything that earlier were available only in the village centers or the towns would potentially be available also from the herding districts. And this could make kind of a whole again of the culture. At least one could have this ambition. And well, I wrote here even from a mountain top, and that's because this capacity of information and communication technology to bridge over time and space is of course not new. When we heard about DTN, it was well known at large globally, and among the reindeer herders as well. But this way of talking about ICTs and mobile access and so forth, people say well, these days even from a mountain top we can communicate. And first and foremost, who lives on a mountain top? Perhaps where it's warmer people can do that, but certainly not in the subarctic and Arctic climate. We don't live in the mountaintops. And also this about total access throughout everywhere over the map, the global map. It's not really true. There is access in more urban areas and in population centers and along larger roads and in airports and so forth. But for natural reasons, reindeer husbandry takes place where there are few people, and ideally also very little infrastructure, because they are animals. They tend to live better in nature than among masts and things like that. So therefore, the suggestion of DTN that Avridoria and Anders Lindgren presented to us, which was about peer-to-peer communications, using data mules to physically transport traffic, seemed like it could create a common ground for a shared society with different cultures getting together, and that this time and space bridging capacity would be possible to arrange without heavy investments in infrastructure and so forth. That would, I'll go further. Yeah. No? I think perhaps, the order was mixed. So this is, just to illustrate the mountaintop principle, and everybody knows it. If you climb up, you might get connectivity. And this picture is from the first real-life test that we made in 2006 in the Padjelanta National Park, and where we tested the DTN using the Prophet algorithm that Anders Lindgren had developed with some other people. And this test was organized together with the women who led the affirmative action, which the whole process started with. So we were part of the community like not a military boot camp, coming in and, but really with the community, which makes big difference, obviously, for this. And yeah, and this is from the same real-life test. This is one of the young master students who participated, Matthias Ek, and he shows, you can send emails. He shows to some of the kids in the mountain, the summer camp, the summer camp. And one of the kids is also my son, he who looks towards you. That's my son Hugo. I brought him with me. So one can easily imagine, everything you know about how to create business and how to create social networks and everything. One can imagine how much it could mean for a community that really needs to live in another place than most people and in another type of, let's say, time zone, because it's the time zone of nature, which is not the same as the clock and the calendar and so forth. So everything you can create for making business or, could be even more fruitful for this kind of a traditional community than it is for us who anyhow have, access to lots of people and, easily interact and get information from different sources that are even physically available. I mean, old-style library, for instance, if that's what we need. I'm approaching the end of my presentation here, so we did tests with one project called SNC 2006 and 2007, summer and winter. Summer were bigger tests, and in a project called N4C that was funded by the EU7 framework project, we did tests 2008 through 2011, and then it was not only Sweden but other places in Europe as well. And as the two main results I would like to mention here is, of course, the Prophet RFC, where Anders Lindgren is the main author, which is about dynamic routing, perhaps one could say, for DTN, and the NSIM, which means not so instant messaging platform for applications and services that Samo Grasic developed. And on the picture you see Samo, at the time a master student, and I would say, well, he's now a PhD student with us and will finish his studies quite soon, present his thesis. And Samo, to us, I would say, would be something like our Scott Burley, I think, if a comparison is possible. He has really done things, made them real, so to speak. And I also want to mention that our partner in the N4C European project, MACE, they have run DTN continuously since 2000 in Slovenia, and they monitor weather and climate and pollutions and things like that. And you can look at our webpage, n4c.eu, and I wrote a summary in the Journal of Community Informatics, which was published in 2012, I believe. And the women who managed the affirmative action project Karin Koljock and Susanne Speak. Reindeer herders, both of them, and business owners. They are, of course, interested in making business. So they have started. They have a startup which they have been running for a while now and try to get going, which is about animal tracking, reindeer tracking, of course. And these pictures just show Karin using the binoculars. One of the obvious things one wants to do is to keep track of where one's animals are. And possibly with distance spanning technologies, we can decrease the use of snowmobiles and things like that have costs and also, of course, burn fuel, which is not ecologically ideal. And and I also want to mention that at least some of those very nice pictures that you have seen were taken by a photographer, Lena Koljock-Lind, who is also a member of this reindeer husbandry community. And this was as a documentation of the women reindeer herders' working life throughout the year. Yeah, and this is, I think that was what I wanted to say. I hope you have understood something. Yeah. Yes.
Is any of this still in operation, or was the test ended in 2007 or 2008? You mentioned that one thing is still going on since 2008.
Yeah, well, we had in these mountain areas, the summerlands of these reindeer herders, the LTU, the last summer major test that LTU made was in the summer of 2010. And then Stephen Farrell and his crew did something more in 2011 with the same community. And, we don't leave equipment there. The whole idea about the network design is that one should be able to put it up and pack it and bring it along when one goes. So, because it should be nomadic, so to speak. So we don't run it now, we hope to, but in Slovenia, where there is totally other climate and also totally other business circumstances for this company MACE, who are doing monitoring of climate and pollutions. So they have been running continuously since 2008. And they've done things in caves and cave systems and so forth, climate watching. Yeah.
So Maria, could you describe what a typical data mule was for this test project?
Yeah. In the first tests that we made in 2006, the typical data mule was the young man you saw on the picture earlier, namely Matthias Ek, who walked with a backpack with a laptop from the camp to where they had put a temporary radio mast that sent to across a big lake to where there was a possibility to have what they call when they I forget words. When you call on the telephone, what's it called again? Modem. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and they did, call. It was calling regularly to, and so forth, the internet, and so that was it. And in the period and cars have been used also for winter tests. And 2008 to 2010, when we made did our N4C tests, actually helicopters were used, because there are some, this is a national park, but there are regular helicopter tours for fetching fish and so forth, and you know, where the tourists can go into the mountains, and so the helicopters were data mules during that time. And I would say I'm not so happy about the helicopters. Everybody loves them because they can go fast and then you get a lot of data. But anyhow, I would like to see more like whatever boats, the small boats that the fishers use, and more walking around and things like that. It has advantages with the helicopter, but it also has certain shortcomings. Well, but that's a negotiation between you want to have a lot of data and you want things to go fast, and there they are. And then these other more kind of maybe science fiction visions that I have about this kind of a system. So.
Maria, I wanted to thank you. This was very, I think, eye-opening in a very technology conference. I appreciate it, because that's one of areas of my interest. Even though technology is very exciting, but the end should be for betterment of human life, no matter where they live. So all the advances in the technology, no matter all the challenges we see, and it was described in the previous few sessions, and overcoming as the problem we want to solve, it's so good to see here the problem is not just the technology requirement, but how to introduce it to human life and the communities for their betterment, as opposed to unbalance it. So I really like this, and I do see the challenges you described here. It's a template of the challenges I see in many other remote or communities around the world. So I wanted to thank you for that.
Well, I'm really glad to hear. Thank you. And yeah, I am actually an engineer as a background, but not at all with information communication technologies. So I'm working with the transdisciplinary things here. But I mean, the ambition is to be able to develop technology that really supports cultural diversity. That's my motive for being engaged in DTN. Yeah.
Thank you for the presentation. I really enjoyed that. Is there in the women's group that you were working with, is there an aspect of the ecological concerns? You mentioned the snowmobiles were not the most ecological thing, but was that part of the discussion that DTN is also addressing, do you think?
Well, yes, there are ecological concerns, and for many reasons. And you know, one difference between being an engineer and being a reindeer herder is if you're a reindeer herder, you're dependent on the state of nature in the area where you reside and where your animals graze. As an engineer, I can move back and forth between different places and, you know, and do my job. Because engineering is about changing reality. So the women are, of course, who are engaged in the affirmative action are, of course, very aware of different types of degradation and threats. And I would say generally the reindeer husbandry community has represents that kind of awareness. And then, of course, we are all members of the same global society these days. And, you know, so one cannot say I will be so totally ecologically correct that I will never use a car or a snowmobile or anything more, because that would kind of take away the economical basis of your life and your family's lives. And yeah.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I enjoyed it as well. So what type of support or technologies would probably have the biggest positive influence on you continuing this wonderful work you're doing? What kind of support would you need in the future going forward?
Yeah. Well, my favorite project would be to be able to continue together with this community and engage people in actually, setting up the network and learn to run it. Because I think we have developed a fairly, stable technology. So, youth, camps for youth in the reindeer husbandry communities all over Scandinavia, that would be great. So that they could learn to use this and put it up themselves. That kind of thing would be, my favorite project at the time. So, equipment and, of course, the possibility to hire the teachers, or if there are voluntary teachers around. Yeah. Yes. I didn't really hear. If I've used. Aha. No, not telephone calls, because we really are talking about, delays here. I mean, so you cannot have the continuous conversation. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The first problem you have is that they're 65 degrees north or worse, and so satellite communication is very difficult because it's right on the horizon. Although I suppose if we could get some laser links like we heard about, that might help. So that's a big problem, is connectivity. When we hear about the Loon project later today, that's one conceivable solution, although it's only been tested in the southern hemisphere and not the northern, and that's using stratospheric balloons to provide this kind of connectivity. But the reason that the DTN is interesting in the current experiments is exactly that the connectivity was intermittent and not necessarily predictable. And so the tolerance of the protocol to that disruption was actually attractive. I think that we should explore offline what it would take to get a continuously operating DTN network in at least one community, and see what would happen over a period of time to how they would use it, and whether, in fact, it helped to solve some of the problems of maintaining the lifestyle while at the same time allowing connectivity that both the children and the families need. So that would be an exciting thing to scope out and see if it could be made more than just a technical experiment. I think we're running close to noontime, aren't we? So maybe we have to stop there.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Maria.